Welcome. This week we're going to do Parshas Veschanan. So the pasuk starts like this: Veschanan el Hashem ba'Yisahi. Moshe is saying that I pleaded with the Rabban Shalom at that time they should let him go into Yisrael. Lamar. What does Lamar mean? Lamar usually means here Moshe is talking to Hashem. Usually Hashem is talking and he says Lamar, which means that whoever he's talking to should repeat what he's being told. But over here Moshe is talking to Hashem. So what does Lamar mean? What does he want? So Rashi says that Lamar the echod mishloishim mekayim she'amar Moshe fnei hamokim. 3 times it's the Moshe said to Rabban Shalom, Eini manichacho, I'm not going to let you go. Ad shetoivieni im tasa sheilosiyim lav. I insist that you tell me if you're makabel my tefillah. 3 times. 1 time is by Miriam. When he davened for Miriam, he davened for her. He insisted that he be told if his tefillah is niskabel. The second time is in Parshas Pinchas when he said Yifkad Hashem Elokei Ruchos. He's asking for the Rabban Shalom to make sure that there's a king, and he meant his own children should have that, and he wanted an answer to that. And the third thing is when he's asking to go in Eretz Yisrael. And go Yisrael, he says, I'm not going to let you go until you tell me if you answer my tefillah. What is the pshat in this? What does this mean? Why is he doing this? The Rabban Shalom is obligated to tell him. Okay, I davened. Now I want to know. Did I get it? Did I not get it? I mean, why does he want to know? I mean, I understand why he wants to know, but why can he demand from the Rabban Shalom that he should tell him, and I'm not going to let you go until you tell me? What's the pshat in this? So, Keseda we find in the Chumash that Moshe davened to the Rabban Shalom. Davened for Klal Yisrael, davened the Magefas should go away, always davening for Klal Yisrael. So, he did the best he could, he davened, and then whatever the Rabban Shalom is going to do, he's going to do. And he doesn't, you have to tell me, did it work, did it not work? The Rabban Shalom will decide if it worked or not. I davened, I put all my koiches into it, I davened. In these 3 places, these were also for the tzibur. These 3 places, Miriam was a tefillah for the tzibur. We see in the Torah of Parshas Balak, it says V'eshlach lachem es Moshe in the pasuk in Micha in the Torah of Parshas Balak V'eshlach lachem es Moshe ve'Aaron and Miriam. Miriam was the shlichus of the Rabban Shalom. She was part of this triumvirate that was leading Klal Yisrael, all the 2 brothers and the sister. Maybe, I don't know how they, separation of duties, what they did exactly, but she was needed for the Klal. She wasn't just a chacham Rebbetzin that was along for the ride, as she was needed. So when he was davening for Miriam, he was davening for the Klal. He wanted the Klal to have the benefit of having Miriam, as she shouldn't be stuck in Saras. When he was davening in Yifkad, in Parshas Pinchas, Yifkad Hashem Elokei Ruchos, appoint a melech, so it was also a tefillah for the Klal. So therefore, and over here also he felt that he's going to Yisrael, it'll be l'tovas haklal. So he was always davening for the klal. However, in these 3 places, there was also a personal side to it. Miriam was his sister, so even though it was for the purpose of the klal, but she was his sister, so there was also that, which is not a klal thing, it was just personal relationship. By Yifkad Hashem Elokei Ruchos, he wanted it for his children, that his children should become the administrative kings, as we spoke in the Parsha in Pinchas. I'm not going to get into that now. So it's also like a personal angle to it. And over here, there's a personal angle also. I mean, he wants to go to Eretz Yisrael. Of course, it's important for the Klal that he should lead them in, and he should establish, it would be gewaldic for the Klal if Moshe Rabbeinu was able to come in with them. But besides that, he also had a negias, a personal side to it. Moshe was concerned that maybe the negias that he had took away from the full force of his tefillah l'tovas haklal. I'm davening l'tovas haklal, but am I really davening l'tovas haklal 100%? Maybe like a couple of percent is for my personal reasons. So that takes away from the tefillah for the klal. So he was concerned if maybe he didn't do it enough. he didn't do a proper tefillah. He davened for the klal, Tovas HaKlal, but still, on one side of his mind, he was thinking, I need this personally. That takes away. So he wanted to know if the Rebbeinu Shalom was niskabel. If the Rebbeinu Shalom told him was not niskabel, then he would understand, or he would suspect, that maybe his tefillah was not a tefillah shlema, and then he would go back and daven again. That's why he wanted to know. Not because he needed to know, he was curious or he needed to know. He was concerned that maybe his tefillah was not good enough. So Moshe Rabbeinu over here goes on, and he talks about Maimer Har Sinai. So he says, "Raki shomer lecha shmor nashar moed." Be very careful. Pen tishkach es advarim ashro einecha, pen yisurim levavcha kol yimei chayecha, v'dafim lebenecha v'nei vanecha. You have to, don't forget what happened here in Har Sinai. Pass it on to your children. And then he describes what v'tikrivun, and you stood by the mountain, v'ahar boyer ba'eish ad leif hashamayim. The mountain was engulfed with fire until all the way up into the heart of the heavens. So we spoke about this in Parshas Yisro when we spoke about the idea of the collective memory. So I would just like to touch on that again, because I think it's very, very important. It's very insightful. So the couple of hours I want to bring up over here, which we spoke about then too, that Raki Shomer Lecha is a different expression from the other schiras. All the schiras is Zachar Shascha, Molech, Zachar Miriam, Zachar, just Zachar, remember. Here the pasuk says, don't forget. Don't forget. Be careful. Don't forget the things that you saw. Why is this? Why doesn't it say, remember what you saw by Har Sinai? And then it says, V'har bar ba'eish ad leiv hashamayim. The mountain was engulfed with fire all the way at leiv hashamayim. If you go back in Yisro and you look where the story happens, the pasuk does not tell us that the fire was all the way ad leiv hashamayim. It just says that there was a fire. It doesn't tell you how large the fire was. Why over here do we speak about how large the fire was, and over there we don't? So the point that we were talking about in Yisro is that all the things that there are, this is the only mitzvah in the Torah that has any kind of connection to Matan Torah. No mitzvah mentions Matan Torah, is connected to Matan Torah. Nothing. The mitzvah of Shuas, the Mantiskar Kiev, the Yisrael Mitzrayim. There are 120 something mitzvahs that are somehow connected to Yitzias Mitzrayim, to the observations, like by observances of Pesach, or anything, any kind of tangential connection, like don't eat shrotzim because Anochi Hashem Elokecha Malcha Es Mitzrayim. It's constantly in your face all the time that Yitzias Mitzrayim. Whereas Matan Torah is not mentioned. It's not mentioned in Birchas Krishma. It's not mentioned in Kapitel Ayin Ches of the Tilim, where it goes through the whole history. Doesn't talk about Maimer Har Sinai. We don't talk about it. We don't. So I was saying that the whole point of all these sechiras, and constantly remembering it, because we need to have a true memory of Yitzias Mitzrayim, because just like one of the Mishalim I gave was, like everyone in America who lives here remembers that there was a civil war, and that there was slavery here. We remember it because it's part of America today. The social consciousness of America, that's probably the number one element in the social consciousness of America. So for Shteitzach, you remember it. The tzibur, ein tzibur meisem. The tzibur never dies. And the tzibur is always the same. Individuals come, individuals go. The tzibur is always the same. And the tzibur has a memory. And it's a longer discussion of how it works, but the tzibur has a memory. The Torah wanted to make sure that the tzibur will have a memory of Yitzias Mitzrayim, so the Torah ritualized the memory. It put it into everything that we do is connected with the memory of Yitzias Mitzrayim. So Mamela, the memory can go on indefinitely. So why Yitzias Mitzrayim? Why not Matan Torah? Because Yitzias Mitzrayim is something that we can imagine in our minds. We could grasp it in our minds. There were slaves, and they were hitting us, and we were hungry, and they're making us work. And then we had frogs, and there was blood, and frogs, and wild animals. And then we went out, and we had matzahs, and then the yam split. And all these things are things we could conjure up in our minds. Matan Torah was not possible to conjure up in our minds. It was the nevuah. It was a chezyon. How do we conjure in our minds? It's impossible. We cannot do that in our minds. The only thing we can remember about Matan Torah is the Eish. This is what the Bach says in Siman Mem Zayin. By Birchas HaTorah, you're supposed to remember Matan Torah. What do you remember? The Bach says that it was nitten mitoich Eish. That's all you could remember. Eish is a Gashmizdika thing. There was a Gashmizdika fire by the mountain, and that you can remember. So that's why when it comes to we can't build a collective memory for Klal Yisrael on something which is practically impossible to remember. All we can remember is that there was a fire. Nothing else can we really remember. We can only remember Matan Torah if we remember Yetzias Mitzrayim. And we were going out to go to Tar Sinai. We were counting Sfira. So Memela, so Matan Torah comes along with the memory of Yetzias Mitzrayim. But if there's no memory of Yetzias Mitzrayim, just to create a memory on Matan Torah, it can't be done. So Memela, that's why everything is focused on Yetzias Mitzrayim all the time. Yetzias Mitzrayim, Matan Torah we don't talk about. However, there's a mitzvah to remember it. You shouldn't forget it. You should remember as much as is possible to remember. What is it possible to remember individually? That there was a fire. Therefore, the Torah takes the fire of Matan Torah, where the pasuk says there was a fire, which is a very minor detail in the overall picture of Matan Torah. There was this Galus Kvay Shemayim. There was Amraim Sakoilas. It was a nevuah. All of Klal Yisrael was being given the matana to be able to have chazyonis, to be neviim. The fire was a very minor part, but when it comes to remembering it, then that's all that you can remember, as you see from the Bach. So therefore, the Torah takes this little detail of that big picture and it enhances it for you. Tells you it wasn't stam a fire. It was a fire that was boyer ad leva shamayim. So at least the part that you can remember to make it more, to bring it more into your memory, that you could remember it better. So that's why it says Raki Shomer Lecha, because basically to say Zechor, you cannot remember Matan Torah in the same way you remember Amalek, in the same way you remember Miriam. All these things have been passed down to us in our collective memory, so we could remember it just like we remember the Holocaust, even though we weren't there, but it's part of the memory of Klal Yisrael. So these things can be remembered. Matan Torah cannot be remembered in that way. But nevertheless, the Torah says, do not forget it. That's why it says, Raki Shomer Lecha. Now, okay, towards the end of the Parsha, it says, Kriya Shema, V'hoil teitofes beinei necha. Everyone knows this pasuk. What does teitofes mean? Teitofes. So Rashi says, that's a tefillin shel rosh. Al shem minyan Parsha Yisrael nikru teitofes. It's called teitofes because it has 4 parshas. Tat bekaspi shtayim, pas be'afriki shtayim. In the language of Kaspi, I guess the Caspian countries, Azerbaijan, or whatever there is over there, Armenia, the tat it means 2, and pas be'afriki, in the African language, pas means 2, so you put together tat fas, so you end up with 4, the 4 parshas. So why would the Torah do such a thing? Why would the Torah do this? Why would the Torah borrow a word, put the splice together from 2 different languages? Why would the Torah do this? So I just want to say what you find also at the beginning of Parshas Kiseitze, that when you capture a Yefas Torah, then if you don't want her, you have to let her go. Loisis Amerba. Loisis Amerba means, I don't know if I marked it here. Loisis Amerba, don't be mishabed in her. It says Loisis Amerba. 1 second. Shreiftim. He says, Lois is samerba. Rashi says, Lois is tamishba. Why does Lois samerba mean Lois is tamishba? Rashi says, B'loshem Parsi. In Persian, Koyin la'avdus v'shimush imra'ah. So the Torah says Lois is samer because in Persian, that word means to work. Why would the Torah borrow a word from Persian to tell you this? Why doesn't it say Lois is tamishba? Why does it say Lois? And why is the Torah using this? So I just want to tell you over what the Shalosh says, and the Torah is not a lexicon of the Lashon Kodesh language. It's not. It tells you a story, a narrative, and it uses many words to tell you the story. But there could very well have been other words that people at that time spoke, which didn't then make their way into the Torah. You have, let's say, big books in English, but doesn't mean that that's a dictionary of the English language. You're not going to find every word in the dictionary in a very big fat book. You'll find many words, thousands and thousands of words. You're not going to find every word. So the Torah is also like that. Every word that they spoke about, that they spoke in Lashon Kodesh at the time, did not necessarily find its way in the Torah. So how do we know what something means when we find the word in the Torah? Because we know it by looking in other places, by looking here, and there. So we look at all the places. All the places we could figure out what the word means. But let's say it only appears once, then how are you going to know what it means? So the word tetafos, he says all languages came from Lashon Kodesh. The original language was Lashon Kodesh. All languages come from Lashon Kodesh. So there are vestiges of ancient Lashon Kodesh in other languages where you won't find them in the Torah. For instance, the word hisamer. What does hisamer mean? Hisamer is not a Persian word. It's a Lashon Kodesh word. It's a Hebrew word. But how do you know what hisamer means? If you found it 5 different places in the Torah, then you could look here and look there, and from the context, you'll figure out what the word means. It's a strange word, but we'll figure it out. If it appears only once, how are you going to know what it means? So there's a secondary of figuring it out. You look in other languages, and if you find this word in another language, then you can assume that the word that says in the Torah, that language got that word from the Torah. That's why it's samerba. So tetafos, the word tetafos is not a splicing together of 2 pieces from different languages. It's its own word, tetafos. What does it mean? How do we know what it means? We could figure it out because tat in Kaspi means 2, and pas in Africa means 2. So therefore, the tat part means 2, and the pas part means 2. You put them together, it means 4, right? So tetafos means 4. So I think what it means is that you're using 2 different words for the 2 and 2. You wanted to use the same thing. Why don't you call it tat or pas? Why are you calling it tat pas? So I think what this word is telling you, a set of 2 pairs. That's what it's telling you. It's not just telling you a number of 4. A set of 2 pairs. So therefore, in the Parshas, you have the 2 Parshas been with Hoya, and the other 2 Parshas. That's one set. Havayis Lemtza, what do you do with this set? How do you work it? Rashi and Rabbeinu Tam. So there's a set which is called the Havayis. That's one set. The other 2 Parshas are a different set. So tetafos means we put together 2 different sets. That's what the word tetafos means. So that's how we get 4, not just because you just add it up. 2 and 2 is 4, so you have 4, and just means 4 Parshas. It's being very specific. It's telling you that these 4 Parshas are composed of 2 pairs of 2, which are different from each other. Thank you very much, and I hope to see you again next week.